She keeps a Moet Chandon in a pretty cabinet. Bethany cake, she says, just like Marie Antoinette. Building a remedy for Khrushchev and Kennedy. And anytime an invitation you can't decline. Caviar and cigarettes, well versed in etiquette, extraordinarily nice. She's a killer queen, gunpowder gelatine, dynamite with a laser beam, guaranteed to blow your mind. Recommended at the price, insatiable and appetite. Wanna try? Complications, she never kept the same address. In conversation, she spoke just like a baroness. Middleman from China went down to get your mind up. Then again, accidentally, midnight went perfume came naturally from Paris. Because she couldn't care less, fastidious and precise. She's a killer queen, gunpowder gelatine, dynamite with a laser beam, guaranteed to blow your mind.
That harm or murder their children, and there's a motive behind it.
In the United States, we don't really have to prove motive unless, I mean, sometimes you have an obvious motive, but sometimes you don't. And we're not required to get into the mind of a crazed killer and come up with reasons why they wanted to kill. In this particular case, without knowing exactly what was said in this video, motive was dissatisfaction, lack of financial security, and spousal revenge filicide. Again, with spousal revenge filicide, you can look up Dr. Phil Resnick. He's the leading expert on filicide and why mothers kill. But we'll go from here. See, these supporters are touching on things that don't need to be touched on. It makes no difference what her motive was or wasn't in court.
99.9% of the time. There's something leading up to it. Well, what we're going to be examining here today.
Well, let's talk about what was leading up to it with Darlie. Financial pressure. Being denied the loan. Having to stay home while Darren took her truck to work, not being able to shop. The boat sitting there, $26,000, needed repaired. Lack of being able to go anywhere. I feel like so many people expect so much from me, she said, a few weeks before the murder. She missed having the freedom to be her young self again, which was written in the diary.
Is we're going to be examining if Darlie had any of these possible motives, and we're going to also look at some medical stuff and psychiatry stuff that surrounds it, and different things that have been proven over the years of mothers that kill their children and why. And we're also going to be taking some questions off of Annie's Facebook page. And today on the panel, we have Solly, and we have Annie Oakley, and we have Danelle. Now, Danelle is Darlie Routier's youngest sister.
Wow.
Annie has been friends with the family for, what, Annie, 5 decades, give or take? And Solly has worked with me personally on some other.
Again, with the Kathy Ramsey, he claims that she's been friends with the family for 50 plus years. She's never been to see Darlie. She doesn't talk to Darlie. She didn't go to the funeral. She doesn't go down there to visit some friend. I don't buy it. Don't buy her, and I never have. She may have known Darlie in the past, but she inserts herself into this as if she knows Darlie very well, and she doesn't. She don't even talk to her. Sully has written to her more than Kathy has. Sully has probably talked. I believe she has talked to her through Secret. Kathy doesn't.
Cases and with this case as well. And she also has her own stuff out there as well, which is very interesting. And we're going to get through that. Tracy, I'm so glad you're here today because I really would love to get you on this panel sometime. And Kim is also here.
Rich, I'd love for you to get Tracy on your panel one time too, and you're going to learn that she does not know this case. Be sure she studies up. I'd love to see you bring Tracy on the panel. I'd love for you to see some of her input on this case. You keep saying that she knows this case, but she doesn't do any videos for Devin and Damon. You know, she doesn't even talk about them. She doesn't raise awareness about Darlie if she thinks she's innocent. She doesn't do that. I guess she does what's important to her on her YouTube channel. Rich, go have a look.
And I know the panel pretty much knows and sends their sympathies. Kim's had two huge losses of life in her family. And I know that they were great people because I know Kim's a great lady. And I had gotten in contact with Kim the other day about it. And so our condolences to you, Kim. We really mean that. We all feel real horrible about it. And anyway, so again, on our formats, regular podcasts will be pre-recorded and released for viewing at a later time. YouTube comments will be left out at this time. I might be turning those back on in time, though, just to let people know. Now, the format we're going to be doing today is an answer and question podcast. We do these.
He has to do these pre-recorded because he doesn't want to do them live anymore. That way, when they say something in this panel right here, if someone in the chat disagrees or comes up with the correct analogy of whatever it is they're talking about, that throws him off and he doesn't like it. That's all there is to it. Turns the comments off because he can't answer the questions. Rich, if you comment to Rich under your videos, he does not answer he'll say, well, the evidence was flimsy at best. He does not answer. He won't answer you. I'd love to get on a panel with just me and Rich, but he won't do it. He thinks I'm going to jump all his shit and everything, but you see, I'm not. The thing of it is when you do this, when you present a true crime story and claim that you have passion behind it, that means that you don't care if you get your feelings hurt. I don't care if somebody snaps at me. I don't care. It doesn't bother me because justice for Devin and Damon. I don't care what the shit these supporters do to me because justice for Devin and Damon. Now, Rich does shit like this. This is just more proof that they can't handle the truth. That's why this channel is run the way it is. Can't handle the truth.
Occasionally, we did one on episode 63. We're going to do another one today because the last one went so well. And so this is going to be a live stream, but we do have an admin here. So if anybody comes in here and tries to start trouble, Bonnie knows to boot them immediately.
He claims that people come in there and try to start trouble. I've been watching his videos for the 5 years that he's been out. His lives. I go back and watch them. I check them. I haven't really been responding to them until now since he's bringing these other yahoos on panel with him. I have never seen Rich be dismayed by someone. I've never seen someone in the chat try to harass. I've never seen it. Never seen it at all. I've never seen him have to deal with somebody harassing in the chat. I have never seen it. If anybody has seen it, please let us know, because he makes this up as if he's being harassed and people are causing trouble in his chat, but I've never seen it. Never. It's just an excuse.
Okay, so again, just quick rules. This is not a pre-recorded podcast, so please just be respectful. We do have members of the family in here, and all of us are friends with the family in here, so please be very respectful toward.
He says it's not pre-recorded, but the chat is missing and the comments are turned off.
Lynn and Darlie's family, and if you're not, it's not going to be tolerated. It's also important to hear and understand both sides of the case. Whether you're on the guilty side or innocent side, you need to look at the other side as well to understand the case fully.
Don't you promote the other side like you're about to promote your side. You tell people that it's important to you to go listen to the other side. But you never lead them to the other side. You never tell them where to go look. You don't give them the opportunity. Go look at the other side, so that your thoughts on how they should look at the other side, it's just no, because you don't bring the other side to your panel very much either. You don't want them to hear it. And you don't want to hear from them. That's why you got your shit turned off.
Now, unfortunately, Tara wasn't able to be with us today. She had something to do. But her channel is Mystery Maverick on YouTube. She's got some great stuff on the Darlie Routier case and some other cases as well. She actually does mini documentaries, and they're awesome. They're really good, and I highly recommend them. And I do know as of right now, she's doing another one on the Darlie Routier case about her wrongful conviction. And it's going to be coming out soon. And I know she's been working real super hard on it. I know for a fact. And then, of course, it's a Solly's program she has on TikTok under Kitchen Table Research. You can join Solly on her YouTube and her TikTok channels. She does a lot of stuff with Darlie, and you can see Danelle on quite a few of those as well. And she does other cases. And she really gets deep down in the stuff. She actually does on some of her podcasts, she actually does experiments and tests, and she shows them live. Very good stuff. Check them out, folks. Never hurts to look. And of course, Danelle has her own TikTok channel at Fugit 1982. And again, that's Darlie Routier's youngest sister. Check it out. She puts some good stuff on there. She really does. I mean, after all, who knows Darlie better than her own sister?
Who knows Darlie better than her own sister?
Also, there's one more item that I'm going to add here. Now, Annie and Jamie, so Annie Oakley, who's on the panel today, Jamie is not on the panel today, unfortunately, but these two ladies, they admin and run some Facebook pages on the Darlie Routier case, and they do it in a debate forum. And they are on Facebook. They can easily be found. And however, you do have to agree
to agree to Kathy's rules, and Kathy's rules don't apply to her. They can insult. They can tell you, well, you need to stop doing this, and you need to look at it this way. They can do that, but you can't. And I put that to the test not too long ago. Not too long ago, because I was in there with them. I was talking to Sully. I was talking to Kathy. And I was talking to Diane on a regular basis about the Volusia axe murders, and some other things. Yeah, I was in there. Remember Tracy? That's me. And Sully put up this. She had a great idea. I mean, it was really cool. She wanted to the Volusia axe murders back in the day. They were just, they discussed the case. There's so many different ways that it's unsolved from a long time ago, and it's unsolved. So she put up a little thing in that group where they wanted to discuss the case, have a mock trial on it, decide who was the perpetrator, and I was right in there with them, talking to them every day. But I got sick of Kathy. That's why Tracy disappeared from that group. Because I got sick of Kathy and her condescending ways. Yeah, she's full of shit. But yeah, if they don't know it's me, I can talk to them, get along, and be just as I was just as kind as to Sully, and Sully was kind back to me. But she didn't know it was BryanSt.John.
Of the group in order to attend and comment. And Annie, is there anything, since this is the first time I've advertised your Facebook account, or excuse me, Facebook page, is there anything that you want to add to that?
Well, basically, kind of like the rules that you have here. It's a debate forum and emotional. It doesn't need to be emotional. We discuss the case, the evidence, not your personal desire or your personal feelings.
Unless it comes to Kathy or Diane or solely speaking, they can do that, but you can't. You can't do that. And I went in there and I followed their rules. And Kathy just like talked to a fucking wall. Well, you have to do this and you have to do that and you have to take this out and you have to do that. She tells people what they have to do in order to believe Darlie's innocent. And the profile that I went in was interested in both sides of the issue. And whenever I would correct her kindly on something that she said, she would start in, well, you seem like you're biased to me. You're not here for innocence. She would go right on. But it went on for a couple months. Oh yeah, and there's also this text of Sully telling someone that I got evicted from my mobile home for smoking pot. We haven't got evicted from anywhere. And pot's legal. But we haven't got evicted from nowhere. There was a problem with the electricity being delivered to my mobile home, for which I own the home, but not the property. When I tried to work with the park to have their poles and their electric delivery system repaired, it caused a big shit between me and the property owner. Because I had an electrical company come out to my mobile home. We were having lights flicker, lights blow up in the socket, appliances blow, and I had already put a new breaker box and all that stuff in it. So I had an electrician come out and take a look at our house to see what we needed to have fixed before I could do any more remodeling to it. And he told me the problem was not with my house. It was with the poles in the park that were delivering the electricity to the homes, because they had some of them catch on fire. They were just hanging there. He told me that the problem was with the poles. So when I took the report to the owner, he lied to me. He tried to get one of his companies to come in there. And no, so I eventually had to I got a hold of the State Board for Manufactured Homes in Columbus, Ohio. I had the fire department come out and take a look at the poles, and they confirmed that they were tore up. I had the power company come out and look at the poles, and they confirmed. I had all the backup that I was right, and I just wanted him to fix the pole because it was causing damage to my house. Well, what they actually did in response to that, and now most of them are empty over there. Ours is sitting empty, trying to sell it. I can't with the electrical problems. They decided they didn't want to rent to me anymore, is what they said, their property. They sent and put a note on the door and said, well, we refuse to rent to you any longer. No reason. But with manufactured homes, they can do that month to month. Now, I did not want to fight him about it. So we took on this other place. And now that we're out there and settled, now I'm working on things about that mobile home. But it sits there, it's mine. But it sits on his property.
It's about the case and not about the people. So that's, as long as people can stick to that rule and self-regulate themselves, don't say, nobody likes someone that would kill children. The difference is we don't think she did. And she deserves every right that every other person in America, and they themselves, if they were walking in her shoes, would deserve.
Darlie's had that right already. So far, due process has been followed with her. It's been followed.
Tis the right to appeals. And to say negative things about it shows such a bias.
She goes with that, such a bias. To say negative things about a female, a mother, who was convicted of killing her children shows bias. No, it shows truth. That's what it shows, Kathy.
But they don't and can't admit that they have. People that are so dead set that they can't discuss it and want to resort to emotional name calling and that kind of stuff, that won't be tolerated.
Yeah, and I agree with her. It shouldn't be happening over there. But I didn't see anyone else over there.
You'll be gone.
Yeah, I noticed
the case and you'll be fine.
Yeah, I noticed, Annie, that you do allow non-supporters in there, and I know you definitely give them all a run for their money.
She doesn't give any run for their money. None. Pam's over there, and Pam owns Kathy on every single post. Politely. She doesn't give nobody a run for money. I just left because I was just, I was tired of her. She didn't give me no run for my money. I left. I was just tired of her. You couldn't say anything that was factual and polite and proper about the guilt of Darlie Routier without drawing anger out of this one. She would tell you how biased you were.
I actually enjoy reading through there, and I know you try to keep it as respectable as possible, which is always important. When things aren't done with respect, it damages credibility. No question about it. All right, so anyway, back to what we're going to be doing today. So we want people in the audience to ask questions, make statements perhaps about what you believe Darlie's motive was. You can ask one of us a personal question about it, or you can ask the whole panel. And we're going to be also taking some questions and statements that came out of Annie and Diana's face group book, or page rather, and we're going to be going through that.
That was a good one, Rich. I'm just teasing you. You said face group book.
So, does anybody have anything they want to say? A statement, a question, anything? And let me ask the other ladies on the panel, who has those questions available to put them out there?
Well, I know we all kind of did a little bit of research about the different types of, mothers who kill or familicide. And we did pull up some statistics on that. Do you guys want to start on maybe some,
Statistically, she's going to go statistically, so I'm going to get myself ready here and look at Philip Resnick.
And we did pull up some statistics on that. Do you guys?
Does anybody have anything they want to say? A statement, a question, anything? And let me ask the other ladies on the panel, who has those questions available
see what she
to
said
put them out there?
Well, I know we all kind of did a little bit of research about the different types of, mothers who kill or familicide.
Mothers who kill. No, that's familicide is more like a John List, Chris Watts type of scenario. Mothers who kill, it's called maternal filicide. It's not called familicide. Familicide is more like it's when you kill your family.
And we did pull up some statistics on that. Do you guys want to start on maybe some psychological statistics and see if we can match, or what our audience thinks, if Darlie fits into any of these subcategories?
We could do that until we start getting some questions or whatnot.
Okay, so I pulled up a study. This is off the OJP government website. This was a experiment done in Great Britain. So I know that it's not American, but they took 89 women who were charged with murdering their daughter or
Okay, she says 89 women. I'm listening. So her study led her to the very first, when you Google search it, OGP filicide, the very first one is what she's basing what she's about to say on. And I know I'm in the right spot. 89 women. So let's see. This is what she's basing it on. It's from the British Journal of Justice. It's during a 6-year period, 1970-75. 89 women charged with killing or the attempted murder of their children were examined in the female remand prison. Hollingsworth or something like that. That prison's name was. But this is, I believe, where she's speaking from.
Murdering their children, manslaughter, infanticide, or attempted murder who had been admitted to a prison afterwards. So it says a total of 48 of the subjects were married, 19 single, 19 were separate.
Let's see.
Filicide, which filicide AP government website. This was a experiment done in Great Britain. So I know that it's not American, but they took 89 women who were charged with.
She also doesn't mention that it was done in 1979, and the women were incarcerated between 1970 and 1975. So it's kind of outdated, pretty much.
Murdering their daughter or murdering their children, manslaughter, infanticide, or attempted murder who had been admitted to a prison afterwards.
You notice that during this study that she's bringing up to us, she didn't use the word familicide. That's the word that she used incorrectly.
So it says a total of 48 of the subjects were married, 19 single, 19 were separated, 1 was widowed. The 6 types of maternal filicide, which filicide is the word for committing murder against your own family, were identified as the first was battery.
First was battery. Let's see. Battery. 36 cases, right? She's took this from just this article, when actually this is just the abstract of the 12 pages that were written in that entire study. There's 12 pages of it, and I'm going to try and find them all. Yeah. I'm going to try and find them all. But she's only going on the first thing she looked up about filicide, and she's going on this right here. She's not going into the whole study.
That's the most common. So, shaken baby syndrome, getting upset with your child and causing a harsh punishment that then leads to death. The next second was mentally ill mothers.
Why does Kathy always want to eat a bag of chips during these things?
Women who killed unwanted children is the third category. Mercy killings. And there was a previous history of psychiatric illnesses requiring treatment in 35 of the 41 subjects that they.
Okay, so we're going word for word. Okay, let's see. I want to see if she actually reads this the right way. But it's word for word so far. There was a previous history of psychiatric illness receiving treatment in 35 cases. Okay. Now, in 35 of these cases, there was a previous history of psychiatric illnesses requiring treatment in 35 cases. Now, since Darlie was abused as a child into her teen years, do any of us think that that would require treatment as a person who was put through a trauma, which was an attack on their body by someone that they were supposed to look up to? Would that require psychiatric treatment? Should she have gotten treatment for that? Yes, she should have. And she didn't.
Studied. So that's a pretty high rate of obvious psychiatric illness that required treatment after the crime was committed and they were imprisoned. It says
No, it's not after the crime was committed. Did they require treatment before the crime? Let me double check myself, though. Nope. It's not after the crime. It says right here there was a previous history of psychiatric illness. Not after the crime. Previous, Sully. Get your shit together here. You're supposed to be a fucking expert.
says that it's more common for younger mothers, for mothers that don't have a good relationship with the father, or like we said, have previous.
So Darlie was 26, and there were issues in her and Darren's relationship, or they wouldn't have been arguing that night. There wouldn't have been any talk of a separation that night. So she was young, and there was discord between her and her husband, right? And it does say that right here. Discord with husbands and cohabitees. Okay, so far we're right dead on Darlie.
Mental psychiatric conditions, and
Now she goes back to previous. And there is a condition with Darlie that went untreated. Whenever you are touched or abused as a child by an adult, there are psychiatric issues with that. That's why Sully went and got her stuff dealt with.
so do we want to talk about the truth? Do we want to talk about, I mean, does Darlie fit into any of these categories? What do you think?
Her and the truth have been talking behind the scenes. I know this for a fact. In my opinion, my IMO, there is no motive. Okay, what would be the motive for somebody to walk in her house and kill her two kids then? If it was to be free of children to live in a different life, Drake would have been included. Well, Drake was upstairs and safe with his daddy. It was financial because no money was gained. If you don't have to pay for two more children to live with you, you will have more money. It wasn't premeditated because Darren.
If she does fit into one, what would her motive be? Because we know that it wasn't an accidental battering. This was obviously a premeditated crime. Her and
Obviously a premeditated crime. There went your random intruder.
Darren, you know, although I'm sure that they had their arguments as any marriage, they had a pretty good family home life. They had.
How many times have you asked to be separated from your husband, ladies? How many times have any of you asked for separation from your husband?
You know, a lot of people say they were not able to pay bills, but in the long run, they had a comfortable family. They would have gotten over that. We all have times in our life that things like that happen. Unwanted children. If this was the case, I feel like that Drake would have been a more likely child for Darlie instead of the two older children that were independent and already in school. So to me, that one doesn't really fit.
Let's see. It's just very rude of Kathy to decide it's time for her weekly slopping when she's on his panel. Youthful parenthood was found in all groups. Darlie was 26 years old. I don't know where she's getting all these other statistics, but it's not in this article. It's just not in this article.
Mercy killing. I don't really see that. The only one that
Yeah, okay, I know what she's talking about. I know where she's at. No, not a mercy killing at all. That's Andrea Yates.
feel like people might be able to pick apart some would be a revenge killing. So she was mad at Darren and did this to the kids for Darren. And I think that's
She had discord with Darren, that's for sure. So the first three that you talked about right off the bat, Darlie fits right in place.
the one that most people that think that Darlie is guilty, I think that's the one that they latch onto.
Well, wasn't Diane, that would have been like Diane Down's motive, but she was about to lose custody and she wanted revenge on her ex who was going to get custody. So if she couldn't have them, no one could.
Well, and then you look at Susan Smith, and that would be an unwanted children, you know. Again, for kind of the same motive, she had I believe, a new boyfriend that did not want children. So that would have been that would fit into the statistical category of unwanted children. And then to give you guys an example of a murder.
Susan Smith, the woman that drove her kids into the lake, he wasn't only a new boyfriend, he was a very wealthy man.
Mercy killing, that would be like Andrea Yates, who drowned her 6 children because she.
Details are very important when you're presenting a true crime case. Andrea Yates had 5 children, not 6.
She had a mental illness and believed that it was God telling her to do this, you know.
She was more mentally ill. She falls on the mentally ill side. The mercy killings is somebody that has a terminally ill child or a child that's living in a life that is not conducive to
for correcting solely
a good, lifestyle. It's more, I feel bad for you.
Andrea Yates also had postpartum psychosis, which my second wife had postpartum psychosis. And I'm going to tell you, that stuff's no joke. I've seen things with postpartum psychosis that could scare a saint. And
although that's a very rare, most women get postpartum depression, but postpartum psychosis is a very diagnosable.
Well, there's usually underlying issues.
She's right that postpartum psychosis probably happens in maybe 2 in 1,000 women. It's very rare, but it's not impossible. It's just very rare.
That lead to the postpartum psychosis. Yeah. We don't even know for a fact if Darlie Lynn even had postpartum depression.
You would have to. How do you not know that she had postpartum depression when we have evidence in her own writing that she was having depression? And there was an episode where she needed to bring her husband home from work because she was depressed and needed help with the kids. So how do you not know that she had evidence of it? There was evidence of it. There was issues in her child life or family life. She had resentment towards her mother. She had resentment towards her stepfather. So how do you not know that she had these?
We don't have any proof that she had that.
You don't look at the proof that she had that because it's obvious that she had that. It's obvious that she needed treatment. To the people that were around her who had been through treatment, such as Beja. Beja went through some things. She got treatment and she was okay. And she saw the same thing happen to Darlie Routier. And told her she needed to get help. She told Darren that she needed to get him help. So the people that are close to Darlie and have experience with it saw it.
It's possible.
It's possible. It's possible. I mean, you're 8 years old and your stepdad's got sticky fingers and he's putting them where they don't need to be at. Yeah, it's possible that could have bothered her. Possible.
Saying it didn't happen. Even she wouldn't tell you that. But there was she never had any diagnosis.
That she did was in the notes that she left a few months before, which again, you
Hear Kathy chewing.
could say, was that some postpartum depression? And most of the time when you have postpartum depression, it's more of a suicidal thought than a
Oh, please forgive me for what I'm about to do. Life has been so hard for so long. I don't want my kids to look at me and see a miserable person every time.
homicidal would start bleeding into psychosis.
Yes.
It differentiates. Some people get it a lot worse than others. Bonnie, I hate to be putting you on the spot here. I hope you don't get mad at me. Bonnie had postpartum depression when she had her son with the prior marriage. Bonnie, is there anything you can share with us about how you would feel when you had that and what it did to everything that surrounded your life? Can you share that today? Are you up to that? Oh, she just yelled through the room. She was busy doing something. So
well,
I can speak to that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I can speak
raising her hand. Shit.
To that. I mean, I had a bout of a few months of postpartum depression after I had my son. And again, it was body image stuff. Your body's going through so many different changes. You just don't feel normal in your regular body. On top of that, you're trying to keep this little human alive. And so that's kind of where my depression lied, was like, I don't have the energy and my body doesn't feel right to me. And this is just, I mean, it's a complete change of life, especially if you go into breastfeeding. That can be really uncomfortable. And, you know, I got mastitis. And so the pain added to some of that. But mine was, you know, looked at, I mean, obviously I had a great OBGYN and they, you know, kept tabs on me. And within a couple months, it just went away naturally. So, but yeah, I had a bit of it.
Well, I mean, I asked Darlie about that in one of our first conversations we ever had. And she said, I don't know if I had it or not. She goes, I can just tell you that, you know, for a couple weeks, everything seemed to make me cry.
She wrote down that she fucking had it. She wrote it down. She didn't write down, I have it. But the things that she was writing down lead you to see that she had a lot of depression over these kids.
And my premenstrual cycle started, and it all.
Rich's premenstrual cycle started, and he was fine after that.
Went away.
That was another thing with me, was like, this was my first kid, and I kept having like dreams that like I was going to drop him, or, you know, it's stuff that's more, I feel like you're feeling internally as being a new mother. But luckily, like, I never was suicidal. But I did have a bout of depression for sure, for probably about 3 months. And it
was 3 months.
You know, it just naturally kind of dropped off when I stopped breastfeeding. So
Yeah, it's sadly it's a common problem for a lot of ladies have it, and they don't kill their children because of it.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. There was no thought in my mind. My mind was almost overstimulated by protecting this child. So it was like he was like this prize, and my fears were that I was going to let him down in some way as a mother. You know what I mean? So it wasn't that I was mad at him or that he messed my body up or something like that. Like, it was more of a personal, internal thing. And so, like I said, I think postpartum depression is more of an internal feeling. You're not projecting the depression, the pain onto the child.
If you have these internal feelings that you're keeping pressed down, right, and you don't have any form to release that feeling through therapy or through activity, then what you'll have is a situation where you're developing intermittent explosive disorder. And those would generally come from people who press down their feelings of, the feelings they have of anger, resentment. They press it down, they don't get it out, and they explode intermittently for absolutely no particular reason. When IED, intermittent explosive disorder, when an outburst occurs, it could be something very simple that set that person off for them to explode. Intermittent explosive disorder. If you ever heard anybody speak about where they've seen red, they were so mad that they do things that they normally wouldn't do because they have sequestered that pain into the pit of their bodies and never let any of it out. You have to remove it from you somehow, or you will explode. Period.
That I would say would start falling into more of the psychosis area.
But yeah, there's actually, from what I've seen, I'm not fit to diagnose by any stretch. If anybody here would have that capability more than anybody, it would be Janelle. But what I can say is this, from what I've seen, because I used to have a lot of...
Janelle is a registered nurse. She is not a psychologist. She would not be qualified to describe any psychological causes or anything. Neither would I.
Clients that suffer from postpartum depression, and I have seen postpartum psychosis, and from what I've seen, there's a significant difference between the two.
Very much.
There definitely is. Definitely. And I can...
That's why it's called psychosis. There is a difference between the two.
tell you in regards to Darlie, there's some screening tools that you can use to determine if a mother has postpartum depression. And I was around Darlie every week for, multiple hours, multiple days every week after Drake was born. And as a 42-year-old mother of 4 now, looking at that postpartum depression screening, Darlie did not have postpartum depression. According to that,
she did not have it. Even though she wrote and her depression came out, the only release that she had from the depression that she was living with was that journal, to write it out, to get those feelings out. And that was, she's trying to get them out by writing it down. But no, she didn't have it. Even though she wrote it down about the things that depressed her and worried her, to the point where she was considering or toying with the idea of ending her own life. But Darlie never had it. Nah, that's just what people write. I wrote yesterday how I wanted to kill myself.
Screening, and according to my experience as a labor and delivery nurse who teaches and watches for signs and symptoms of postpartum depression, Darlie did not fit postpartum depression. Did she have some
of the signs and symptoms, Danelle? Could
Superficial.
you explain some of those to us, some of the criteria?
Absolutely. So a lot of mothers have this, I can't function after, it's debilitating.
It's been so hard for so long. I feel like everybody expects too much from me.
I don't feel like doing my makeup. I don't even want to take a shower. It's just a taxing effort.
Like hiding off into your room for weeks at a time, which is what Darlie did. I don't know why Danelle's not mentioning this.
Even to get out of bed. And it starts with tearfulness, but consistently tearful, not just a sad commercial or you hear a sad news and it makes you cry.
It's tearful when the cameras are on you and you're claiming you didn't kill the kids. You have to be tearful afterwards. You can't be, smiling and dancing, and then when the cameras come on you, you're tearful. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Everything makes you cry. The thought of changing your baby's diaper makes you want to cry. It's a very overwhelming sense of crying, and just an emptiness almost inside you, like you feel like you have a void. It is something that
cry while you're sitting on the stand accused of killing your 2 children, and the people who accuse you of killing your 2 children put a big picture of your 2 children that were killed facing you, and you showed no emotion whatsoever. Tell me about that psychosis. But as soon as someone mentions to you about letters that you wrote in jail and how did you get those, and then started crying to the point where a juror, Rena Way, handed her a napkin to wipe with, you can see the difference in the psychosis there.
We teach our fathers to watch for whenever we're discharging mothers and babies, and we tell them, if tearfulness is okay, but if you have that unwavering sense that you're not doing a good job, or a feeling like you just
maybe Darlie didn't care that she wasn't doing a good job, you wouldn't cry about it,
can't get over this sadness, then it's okay to reach out for help. And it is very easy to treat. It's usually a short-term treatment that you can take yourself off of. Once you are cleared by your doctor, they'll wean you off these medications. And we typically just tell the dads, if you notice that your wife is feeling overwhelmed, if you notice that your wife is withdrawing, if you notice that your wife is not doing her...
I wrote down that she felt overwhelmed. She wrote it down. Dara still didn't get her help. Everyone expects so much from me. That's overwhelmed.
Her normal activities. If your normal day-to-day life is becoming non-existent, you're not doing anything other than feeding the baby.
Sitting at home, can't go anywhere and shop because the car's broke. Money's not there. Not doing anything but laying dormant. Nothing to do. The devil can occupy an idle mind.
Baby, if you have to, and sleeping, then that's a sign you need to definitely get your wife some help. Darlie did not have any of those symptoms. Darlie maintained an exceptionally clean health.
The amount of denial here is ridiculous. She is disregarding the things that were written down just 3 weeks before these murders.
House. She still catered to her boys as if they were little princes. She, cooked dinner every night. They had meals every night together as a family. She took care of her.
For the times that, they said that they wanted to teach Devin and Damon the world culture by taking them to Italian restaurants, Chinese restaurants, Italian, they take them to medieval times. They would take them to different restaurants so they could learn the culture of other people. And that's written by Darlie. So the cooking every night.
Herself, she wore her makeup. She continued to wear clothes. She was working on getting herself back to where she was pre-baby weight, but it wasn't like a life-altering baby weight. There was maybe 5 or 10 pounds that she had extra. But Darlie was definitely functioning at her normal level. She was
her normal level to write down how she wants to kill herself? Is her normal level to lay across the bed after she's called her husband to come home and help her with these kids? Is that normal? Who's lying here? What we know that Darlie wrote, what Darren told us, or Danelle?
Was not in a state where she was bedbound and, tearful 99% of her day.
No, yeah, she's not 99% of your day. Yeah, some of the day maybe.
Was definitely no signs of that.
No sign, definitely no signs of her having postpartum stuff. Not at all. I know your father will take care of you.
Darlie's life.
When I feel like at 8 months out, you've kind of crossed that.
Yes.
It's really 6 months and before. And like you said, I remember a few days where taking a shower and just getting your teeth brushed while you're trying to take care of a human. And I remember having a couple of days in bed, but like you said, my mom and my husband were there. They were amazing. They were supportive.
Yes.
I went on, now they even, because it's so common, they even have, antidepressants that you can breastfeed on, because so many women do need to put on a short spout of medications.
Yes.
And that it's safe for the baby. And so I feel like but in 1996, like postpartum depression wasn't looked at like we look at it now, like 30 years later.
All right. So when you come to us with statistics from fucking 1979 from another country, not the same as it was here in America in 1996.
They recognize the signs and symptoms, and it's something that I feel like is not as shameful, for mothers to talk about. And so, I agree. I mean, by all accounts and pictures that you see as Drake as a baby, Darlie looks put together. She looks happy. The house was clean and taken care of.
I was always concerned about being put together. That's why she asked for a moment to have her hair done. She filed a motion to have her hair done before the trial. And Greg Davis made a joke about that.
So I agree. And it's a spectrum. It's not like, oh, you have it or you don't. Like it can be mild postpartum or, more moderate to severe. In which case, like you said, the doctor will assess and can put you on short-term medications for that. That is also safe for the baby. So
yes. Absolutely.
Well, not just that. I mean, this is my opinion. Okay. I mean, I wasn't there, but I mean, I think Darlie did have a little bit of a bout of depression after Drake was born. I'm not referring that necessarily to postpartum.
Don't backtrack. Even Darren said she had a case of the baby blues.
Depression, but my gosh, having 3 young children in the house running around, that's a hard job. And I know that from being a single parent at one time in my life. But I really, Bonnie, if you could, and I know I'm putting you on the spot, and we didn't even talk about this pre-program here, but my missus suffered from postpartum depression when she had both of her sons. Now, her sons are both grown men now, so we're going back a long way. But Bonnie, could you maybe come on the panel and describe what your symptoms were like, what it put you through, how you felt, and maybe we could compare apples to oranges with it.
Well, and I like what Kim said really fast. It's the baby blues. Like some women just get the touch of the baby blues. It doesn't have to be, like I said, it's a spectrum. It's not like you have it or you don't. Like,
remember, Janelle said she's definitely showed no signs of it. None.
Well, I want to say something too in regards to the postpartum depression. It is a real thing and it is easily treatable, but so is depression. And even with Darlie, outside of that acute postpartum period, the 6 weeks to the 6 months, even outside of that, or even before that, there wasn't any signs that Darlie had depression. Was she a normal, overstimulated, overworked, tired mother of 3? Abso-freaking-lutely. Any mother of 3 that's keeping their...
How could she be overstimulated and overworked when for 2 years prior to the murders, she had hired housekeepers to help her and babysitters to babysit? How's she overworked? My wife is disabled. She has very limited use of one of her arms. In this older home that we have found ourselves in, built in 1875 in the historical district of Dayton, Ohio. I like the way it's built, but does not have a washer and dryer hookup, which means that we have to take our laundry to the laundromat once a week and do it at the laundromat, which is fine. And Nicole does that on her own. Sometimes she gathers the laundry and puts it in a cart, a rollable cart, and rides the bus if I'm at work to the laundromat. And here she's got cerebral palsy, very no use of one of her arms, hand. She's not asking anybody to do her fucking laundry for her.
Her house spotless is going to be exhausted, and Darlie didn't.
Yeah, she's going to be exhausted if she was keeping that house spotless. Thank God for the maid she had, right?
That was a
have
big
a
house,
whole lot of
too.
help. Yeah, and she did an excellent job for 3 kids under 10, and her
I was
house
gonna
to
say,
be
she
clean
had
enough.
kids under 6, really.
Yeah, well, Devin was fixing to be 7, so yeah. It was really close. But they were busy kids, and they were just normal kids. So it's not like they were, keeping their own room spotless. Darlie was keeping everything clean.
Well, what was she paying her housekeepers for?
And you don't typically do that if you have depression. Most people that have depression, those things kind of fall to the side. That's less important. And
that's why you pay someone else to do it, right?
you don't have the energy. The energy is just not there.
Dishes stack up.
Yes.
Like you said,
Darlie did not have any signs of any depression. Now,
Nothing. None at all. Fuck out of here, man.
she could have had some mild, episodes of feeling overstimulated and down or whatnot. And she did.
Overstimulated and down. Anytime you're down, that means you're depressed. Depression means you press on something. Depress. Down. She might have been down sometime, but she didn't have any sign of depression. Now, definitely. Fuck out of here.
Have that mood before she wrote that letter. She wrote that to Devin and Damon. But even the state's paid psychologist didn't even think that she was suicidal at that point when she wrote the letter.
And I do want to make it clear that
She was writing about suicidal terminology. I know your father will take care of you, stuff like that. The essence of ending your life by the author is in those paragraphs that she wrote. I believe it was May 3rd of 96. The essence of depression and the thought of ideology of suicide are within that paragraph. If somebody that doesn't know this case was just presented with what Darlie wrote in her diary, what would they think? What would they think about the author's state of mind during that writing? Try to test that with someone, that doesn't really know Darlie's case, and just show them the excerpt of the diary and say, "Hey, tell me what you think about that." And the first thing they're going to tell you is, it sounds to me like there's a very depressed mother that's about to kill herself. It's plain to see. It's in writing. And Danelle just does not see it.
in psychiatry, suicidal ideation, if you haven't had the ideation for 30 days and are using like coping mechanisms and getting help, you no longer are considered suicidal. It's a 30-day.
Okay, so what was her coping mechanism and her getting help after the 30 days then? What was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bonnie, can you come on the panel and explain what your symptoms of postpartum depression were like?
Everybody's pretty much covered it, the similar things.
Can you turn your volume up? We can't hear you.
Is that better?
I know you're there, but we couldn't hear you very well.
Is that any better?
Very little.
Yeah.
Hold on, I gotta switch off my Bluetooth.
Oh, okay.
I think this is really important information to
Okay,
discuss,
is that better?
Not just
So
for
only taking a-
Darlie's
Oh,
case,
you
but
sound-
for everybody.
so only taking a big
yes, way
vape
better.
hit.
You sound perfect, Bonnie. Go ahead.
Okay, I was gonna say, everybody's pretty much covered it. I wasn't diagnosed with postpartum depression. It was probably more baby blues. But yeah,
I wasn't diagnosed, but I'm going to tell you the symptoms right now. Darlie wasn't diagnosed. Remember, Bonnie is not diagnosed, but she's going to tell us what it's all about.
house was a disaster. I couldn't keep up with any of the day-to-day chores. I mean, my children were cared for and fed, and we were fed, but that was about it.
Yep.
There was no life was a shambles. There was no keeping it together. And we were running a small business at that time, and I was caring for a newborn at the business, and it was just overwhelming and a lot without a lot of support. So
absolutely,
I very much identify
Buddy,
with Darlie with not having a lot of support in the house beyond, of course, my mom.
I'm saying that Darlie was not having a lot of support in the house, but they failed again. She had housekeepers for 2 years. She had Renee Stanley and Rebecca Neal helping with the kids. There were times where the kids went with their grandparents for a week. She writes about that in her diary.
Mom and aunts and stuff helped me when they could, but I mean, my husband was not very attentive that way because he was working 2 businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember you telling me before, Bonnie, that remember in the early days when I was initially investigating this case, I remember you telling me one time when we were looking at the letter that Darlie had wrote and stuff like that. And
I like the way he says, remember when I was initially investigating this case. When he says the word investigating, it makes you think that he's trying to find something for someone else as if he were employed to do so. No, Rich, you look at the case. You study the case. You don't investigate the case. You have no one to answer to. You have no one that's paying you. You use the word investigate as if you're some kind of investigator, but you're not. You keep talking about Sully's worked this case with me and she's worked that case with you. Okay, well, who's paying you? Because that's what work is.
I remember you telling me I could very easily see how she could have, fell into that slump, but yet not doing anything horrible like murdering those little boys because you've been there. Remember you and me talking about that?
Yeah, because, writing is an outlet for me too, or it has been at different times in my life. And just because you write something and you have a feeling doesn't mean you're going to act on it. And
look at that. Just because she wrote that doesn't mean anything. It means a lot. Darlie didn't think anybody was going to see that. Those were her real feelings. And remember, her diary wasn't very long either. I think it was over a period of a few months.
we don't know what exactly she was feeling or what her intentions were, because
Even though she writes down exactly how she's feeling and what her intentions are, we don't know them.
it wasn't written to us and it wasn't written for us to understand. It was just her outlet of her emotions at that time. And I don't think, it was as big as people try to make it out to be.
No, I don't think it was either. Yeah. And believe Bonnie knows her
So, Rich, let me tell you. If you came home one day and you happened to do some nosing around and you found a journal and your wife Bonnie wrote something like that in there, what would you think? What would I think if I saw my wife writing something down that even mentioned ending of life, her own, and her depression? Would you think it was no big deal if your own wife wrote something down like that, Rich?
Stuff, ladies. I know Bonnie's pretty silent on most things that we talk about, but believe me, she listens and she knows her stuff. Bonnie's one of the most intelligent women I've ever known in my life. Definitely in the top three.
I agree
Okay.
with that.
I do want to say though, like what Danelle was saying, I think it's really important to hear women talking about this subject, not just for Darlie's case, but in general, because if you're feeling postpartum, if you're feeling depression, go reach out for help. There is no shame in getting help.
Yes, easy fix.
Easy, yeah.
Right.
And
Darlie didn't do it. What would you tell Darlie if she was in front of you and you read that letter? Would you tell her to go get help?
some people are saying it's not quite as easy. Well, you know, with today's stuff, if it's just depression or postpartum, that is fairly easy to treat. Now,
for the most part.
If you get into more like comorbid psychological issues or, you know, then,
underlying,
but what we're talking about today, I feel like is something that no one should be ashamed of. And if you've had a new baby and you're feeling this way, just reach out for help. Contact your doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Would you tell Darlie that? You did. But we know Beja. You can't listen to Beja, though, because she was into a lot of drugs. She was jealous of Darlie. They had a falling out. She was in and out of mental hospitals. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's other social agencies that people can get in touch with. Much easier today than what they could in, let's say, when Darlie's
Darlie needed it.
two boys were murdered, so it's significantly different now. They're actually starting to begin to take mental illness more seriously. I think they have a long way to go with it, but there's a very serious mental illness problem in the United States.
Always has been. There's a very serious mental illness problem everywhere. It always has been. When you think about these state institutions that they had, these nut houses that they had in the 30s up until the 60s, they don't have those like that anymore. Not like that. Treatment is different now.
Very serious, and it's been ignored
Agreed.
for way too long, and it's very sad because I know a lot of great people that suffer with mental illnesses, and you know they don't get the proper treatment, the proper medications, and I mean their life is just a catastrophe from start to finish, or then they begin to start self-medicating, and that's like one of the worst things you can do.
Agreed.
And I always like to use Sid Barrett as a case point on that. He was the initial leader of Pink Floyd before Roger Waters took over, and he suffered from like schizophrenia, but he got involved in hallucinogenics. And one of the worst things you can do with schizophrenia is add hallucinogenics to that. And obviously Sid Barrett went off the deep end. And for the rest of his life, after he was basically kicked out of Pink Floyd because he was like a vegetable, the rest of his life was almost next to useless after that. And these things happen, and they're very sad. He was a very talented man. So, that's not what we're here to talk about. But this is important stuff. It's very important information, not only pertaining to the Darlie case, but even as the public. It's important to you as well. I don't know what it's like to have postpartum depression. I'm not a female, but I've seen a lot of it.
Yes, men do get postpartum depression. It's called parental postpartum depression for men. It does happen to them. Rich says he knows through experience, through working with these people who have postpartum depression. That's how he knows about it, right? But he also says men don't get it. Men do get it. So I've had it. I know what it's like. And it does go away quickly, but men can get it. If a father is experiencing symptoms of postpartum depression, it is important for them to seek professional help. Treatment typically involves therapy, medication, or a combination of both. Early intervention can help with fathers manage their symptoms and improve their well-being. It's also crucial for partners and family members to provide support and understanding to fathers who may be struggling with postpartum depression.
I mean, I had a client one time that almost killed her little baby by throwing it out the window, but she had postpartum psychosis. And
He has had these clients that did this. All right. He worked as an activities instructor, coordinator for a mental health treatment center. He didn't continue in that work the rest of his life, but he keeps saying that he had these clients. Activities coordinators, all they do is set up the activities for the week, and oversee the activities that these people that are in these places, what they just set up activities for them, give them something to do. They do not sit down and counsel them. They do not make assessment plans. They do not do treatments. They do not do any of that.
I could talk about 100 different cases, but we're here to talk about.
Like Bonnie said, what's the first thing that a therapist is going to tell you? Write down your feelings. And then they took.
Write down your feelings. I didn't have any of this, though.
That and turned it against Darlie, when that's going to be one of your first coping mechanisms that a therapist is going to give you. Write down your feelings.
Okay, if a therapist is giving you the coping mechanisms as to write a journal, all right? But Darlie wouldn't need that because she definitely had no signs of postpartum, as Danelle said earlier. So why are we going with what a doctor would? So she's doing what a doctor would tell her to do? Had she been properly diagnosed with postpartum?
Things, chart things.
Well, not just that. Do you think that, and because I know Darlie Lynn very well on a personal level,
he doesn't know her very well. He knows what she tells him.
Do you think Darlie Lynn would have left that in the house for the police to find if she was going to murder those boys?
That's a very good question. That's a really good question. But she was at the hospital. Now, she did tell Beja. Look at that smug look on Sully's face. Looks like she's trying to poop or something. But she did at the hospital whisper to Beja to go into the house and get her sex toys. She was worried about the sex toys. All right. She may not even have considered what she wrote in the diary because there were no journal entries in it for several weeks up until the murders. Now, Rich does ask a very good question. And why would she leave it there? Well, for one, she couldn't physically take it. And for two, if she asked somebody to get it, could you get my diary? She'd know that they'd look in it. It's human nature. She had to take her chances with that diary, in my opinion.
You cut out just for a second there. Were you asking me that?
No, I'm making a point.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just making a point. I mean, because I know Darlie Lynn, and she's a great lady.
Yes.
Why would she leave a note like that in the house if she murdered her boys? Don't you think she would have gotten rid of that?
That's he makes a good point. If she were to do this, that's why we think that it wasn't really that premeditated. We think it was instant. her diary was likely upstairs in her room. She didn't have a chance to get rid of it, in my opinion. That's a good point, though.
Absolutely. She was smart enough to know.
Well, it's like, what if they had found, they found the letter, but then they found a list next to it of like, this is what I need to do. I'm going to stage this. They didn't find anything like that. Like,
no, they didn't find a list of the things that she was going to do to stage the crime scene, because the staging that she did put on was weak. So writing it down wouldn't do any good. She used a fucking serrated knife to cut the screen and carried that evidence back to the block. She wouldn't write anything down.
No, the rest of that journal, majority of her journal was talking about, her religion and how she felt that she was blessed and how she loved watching the boys grow. And
she didn't talk anything about her religion, but her journal does show a lot of thankfulness. And then it just, at the end, the last entry just contradicts every fucking thing that she wrote before that. She went from, I'm not one, and one of my children is gone. And she wrote about how she was just really, really blessed for these kids for many entries before that last one was just totally different.
How she was excited about their future and how she loved Darren. There was a little bit about, she's 26 and married with 3 kids, and she wanted to know what it was like to feel that, desire for her husband again. Not that she wasn't in love with him, but she just had a baby and there was a lot going on. But again, if you look at what Lisa Clayton says, they had a strong marriage. There was a strong bond between the two of them. There was no
strong marriage. But the night of the murders, Darlie asked for a separation. Will we think that Dr. Lisa Clayton doesn't know what the fuck she's talking about? Strong marriages do not ask each other for separations.
Economic crisis like the state wanted for everybody to believe. It was very clear to Dr. Clayton that Darlie was being honest and that she did not have any mental illness that would contribute to, and she was not fabricating her story. So,
and being on death row for almost 30 years, she still has no psychological diagnoses. They said she might have a PS or what's that called?
A PSA, public service.
Post-traumatic stress disorder.
Oh, yeah. PTSD. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Who wouldn't after?
I mean, who wouldn't have that after 30 years on death row? I mean,
absolutely agree.
God. So,
well, because she's in a controlled environment, right? So if she has that depression, they're not going to do anything for her for it. And if she acts out because of that depression, the COs aren't going to say, well, she got PTSD, so let's give her a break. She has no choice but to live with it if she's got it.
So, but anyway, look, when I had open lung wall surgery, and Bonnie remembers the doctor's assistant come in the room one day and told me and Bonnie, like, look, Rich, we know you're going to have, post-traumatic stress disorder just because of that surgery. You're going to be afraid of things. It's exactly what he said. So I don't know that I've necessarily called it a psychological condition. It can also be caused from things going on around you. But
that's
again,
exactly what it's caused by.
Yeah.
Right.
It is. Right. It is definitely caused by trauma.
Now, another thing I want to touch with on all this is because we're on motive. One of the first things the national news media started spouting off about after the boys were murdered was there may have been 2 large insurance policies involved. I'm going to tell you, that still irks me to this day to hear that. Mm-hmm. Now, Darlie and Darren had a $5,000 life insurance policy on each of the boys. Now, Drake did not have an insurance policy, but he was also too young to get put on a life insurance policy at that time. So you have to remember that. I mean, you can't just get born and the next day get put on a life insurance plan. I don't know if it's like that now, but it was like that in 1996.
Jennifer Lopez has her ass insured for $2.2 million.
And if the motivation was money, which we still hear this, why wouldn't Darlie have killed Darren? Because Darren was worth like almost
most of the people who know this case and know it well on the guilty side know that Darlie did not do this for the money. She did it for the lack of it.
$750,000. Why wouldn't she kill Darren? And why kill the boy? When both of the boys were only worth $10,000 dead, and it cost
together.
Right, together, and it cost
to raise a child from age birth to 18. It is guesstimated that without putting your child through college, that it costs $780,000 to feed and nurture a child up to 18.
Recall between $12,000 and $13,000 for funeral and burial expenses. So they didn't even make out on those insurance policies in any way. It was definitely in the deficit. As a matter of fact, from what I understand,
his mother told me during an interview that she had to pay the extra $3,000 for their funeral because Darlie and Darren didn't have it, but they were financially secure, but couldn't come up with $3,000 to bury their kids.
Your sister's former mother-in-law, Cyrilda, actually had to kick in a little bit of money to help with the final expenses on the
flowers.
Boys and kids. Okay, is that what it was? Because there just wasn't any money left.
Right.
Yeah.
And there was nothing coming in because Darren wasn't working. So that's
right.
She contradicts what Cyrilda said because Cyrilda said that she paid the extra $3,000 for the $13,000 funeral. Cyrilda didn't say, I paid for the flowers. She paid $3,000. Danelle doesn't even know. And I heard that. For those that have followed me for all these years, we heard Cyrilda say that she had to pay the other $3,000 to have them buried, is what she said.
Hard part about being self-employed.
Definitely.
Well, and I can answer some questions. There's been some debate on Kathy's Facebook page about why did Cyrilda need to put money in? Okay, well, I've worked at a funeral home. I'm a former mortician. I can tell you guys the expenses, just because they were buried in one casket is not really going to pull down any expenses. You have 2 bodies, one that came from the medical examiner's office, one that came from Baylor Hospital. Transportation is $500 per hour. So you have to transport 2 different people.
How much is transportation in 1996? Let's take a look. Yeah, she's correct in this. It's a ship out fee, and it runs between $500 and $1,000.
Then, a standard just to put a funeral together is $2,500. A viewing is an extra $500. The facility to rent out, whether it's at the church or funeral home, costs money. The casket's obviously going to be a couple of $1,000s, even if they just had one. But then you have to remember they embalmed 2 different bodies, so that's doubling the cost of that. A spray, the flowers that go on top of the casket are $2,000 in today's pricing abouts.
And ours was more. Ours was way more.
And I know that you guys, and this is very common with people that have children, or unexpected people that end up dying, they typically throw over the top funerals, you know, as to where when people are in like maybe palliative care, they're like, I just want to do a cremation. But when something like this happens, to have that type of funeral with the flowers and all of the arrangements and to make it beautiful helps the family with the closure. So, and like I said, just the spray that sits on top is $2,000. Then you've got.
The thing of it is we know that the funeral cost $13,000. $10,000 was covered by insurance. So Routier gave the other $3,000. She can go on and categorizing this all she wants.
All the flowers that go in front of it. And I hate to get into some of the nitty gritty details, but during the embalming process, they would have had to cover up those wounds. Otherwise, embalming fluid is going to leak through the wounds that the boys had. So they're going to have to go in and do reconstruction, seal those wounds up just to be able to embalm them. You know, then you have a headstone, and they have a shared headstone, but it's based on letters. So that headstone has both of their names, the dates, the quotes. You know, that gravestone probably costs a couple of $1,000s in itself. Then you have servicing a hearse, servicing a flower van, wreaths. You have to pay the pastor. It's a couple $100s for all the paperwork and death certificates, and then you have to double that cost. So you're really like our bigger funeral.
Looks like Sully has finally got into where her expertise actually lies.
Funerals that we threw with the flowers and stuff typically cost between $12,000 and $14,000 for one person. That's in today's money. So I would say that, you know, I can see why that funeral did cost that amount of money, especially because, you know, even though there's only one casket, you're not realizing the labor and work it is to put both boys into that casket, and what the embalming processes and transportation processes would have been, because there would have had to been reconstruction work, makeup done. Like I said, they have sleeves that go around the body. So, you know, if somebody's damaged in a car wreck and say their leg is damaged, we like, it's almost like saran wrap. Like we wrap that leg and close it off from the rest of the body, embalm the rest of the body, and then you embalm the leg separately through the femoral artery. That way the body gets embalmed and nothing's going to leak out. And like, I think this is something that a lot of people don't know.
Sully's on a roll with what her actual expertise is in.
Unless you've worked in the funeral home, is how the embalming process works. It's a very hard process. And then any kind of scrapes, or even if you have a ventilator, like during COVID, once you embalm, it exasperates any even dermal, and it'll leave like huge red rashes. Like if they had an IV in, you know, before they passed away, we have to close that IV line.
Well, with Darlie, with Devin and Damon, theirs was more expensive because it wasn't just a regular casket. They had to order a casket for a morbidly obese patient, person, member, whatever. And that casket was almost double. It may have been actually more than double what a typical child's casket cost. So that's where a lot of the expense came from. But you're right. We're paying for all the process and all the time.
You have to dig a bigger grave. And so that costs money. Like people don't realize how much, you're digging up 2 plots, not just one. So just because there's one casket, people think, oh, it should have been a lowered expense. No, it probably would have been a higher expense, as Denell stated. Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
And also the cemetery where the boys are buried at, I've been there on many occasions. Matter of fact, everybody on the panel here has been there, and obviously Danelle's been there. That's a very high class cemetery. That is an expensive cemetery to get buried. That was another thing I was going
to say, is that plot of land that they're on, and that grave site is gorgeous. It would have cost more money to bury them in that specific plot. Yeah.
Right by that tree. That tree would definitely
overlook the lake. And you can even see on different cemeteries where you pick out plots, like, oh, you can have a pond view. You know, you can have a lakeside view. That costs more money. You know,
premium lots for sure.
Premium lots, exactly. Thank you.
Now, another motive that gets brought up a lot is, and this is probably the biggest one, especially on the non-support side, is that Darlie and Darren's marriage was going under. They were fighting. They were this and that and everything else. Now I've had the opportunity to talk to Darlie about this face to face, and we talked about it several times actually. And this is what she had told me, that for about a week Darlie had been downstairs. Yeah, her and Darren were having some differences. And I said, what were these differences about? I mean, what were you not getting along about? And she said it was just about, Darren liked to have a lot of play toys, but yet he didn't want to take care of them. Like, for example, I kept telling him I needed him to fix that gate on the fence, and he wouldn't do it. And, his car was broke down, and that guy that owned that car dealership had called me and cussed me out. You can see that part of it under her testimony. And just different various things she was irritated about. Now, she did tell me that it is true that she did ask Darren for a separation that night. But
I think that was.
Why didn't they mention that until later? They did not mention the separation until they started looking at Darlie.
I think that was more of a, if these things don't get corrected, then this is what I'm thinking will happen. I don't think she was really like, I want to be separated from you. You have to be careful with how you word it.
No, wait a second. I wasn't.
Darren wasn't very careful about how he worded it. No, Danelle, you do not have to be careful about how you word that. Because Darren made it perfectly clear. That his wife asked him for a marital separation. You don't have to be careful how you word it. You have to be careful how you word it. We'll read it for what it is.
Finished, but I did ask her specifically about that. I said, Darlie, were you telling me you were going to leave Darren, or were you trying to kick him out? She said, no. She says, I was trying to get him to do things.
Yes.
And absolutely. So I'm not really certain.
So she was frustrated with her husband. Going back to the beginning where she led us to the study, one of the main things is discord with a cohabitant of the place that they live, where these murders occur. Discord. I was trying to get him to do things, and he wouldn't listen to me.
Certain that, let's face it, everybody on a panel here has been married, so we all know what marital arguments can be like. We get mad at one another. Sometimes we say things we might not necessarily mean. She just wanted him to take care of business better. Business meaning things around the house, his car, the boat, the gate, just different various things. She said it really wasn't that serious, but she wanted him to take charge of this stuff a little bit better because she was taking care of the 3 children plus herself.
She was not taking care of the 3 children plus herself. She had babysitters and housekeepers.
Plus Darren for all intents and purposes. And it was irritating her.
What if Darren would have took some of the money that he was making from Tesnique, where Darren would sit and do all the contracts, what if he hired somebody to do that and just stayed home? What if he paid somebody to do that? Because in a sense, that's what Darlie did. If his responsibility was to upkeep that company and keep good money coming in, and she didn't have to work there, she should intuitively take care of the house that he provides and the children. Instead, she hired other people to do that. She didn't want to do that shit.
So I can understand that to a certain degree, meaning what Darlie's trying to tell me, you got things you need to do. You need to take care of business. And I think that's really what the point.
Take care of business, buddy. And can I have the money for the maid? The maid needs to be paid. Can I get that? And you need to start taking care of business, though. Damn. Can I have extra money to pay this babysitter?
that she was driving at with him, and that's pretty much what she told me. It's not that, she didn't say, Darren, I want a divorce, get the F out of the house. She never told him nothing like that.
She wanted marital separation. You're trying to minimize this, where we have it in writing. Marital separation.
But she did say, I want a separation because you're not taking care of things. And she said Darren liked to have a lot of play toys, and he just didn't take care of them. And
are you downplaying what a marital separation is? That means I don't want to be around you.
it drove her crazy.
Yeah, I don't think it was a true request for a separation. I do think it was more of a negotiating type.
That's not what Darren says in his written affidavit to the court. So you can think whatever the fuck you want to think about it.
Factor, for sure.
Yeah,
Well, like I said, it goes on through every marriage. And the other day when I was talking to Rich, we were saying, like, marriage is not for the faint of heart. Like, you have to have these hard conversations. And I think as a woman or a man, you've had to come to your partner and say, look, like, you're spending too much time at work, or, around the holidays, like, we want you here.
Spent a lot of time making a point for us that there was discord between Darren and Darlie. And like you started this podcast with a study, and one of the main things they said was discord with the cohabitants of the home. And you guys are just sitting there pounding it in how frustrated she was with Darren.
Can you take a few days off? And like, I think that's very normal in a marriage to be like, look, I need help. Like, I just need help right now. We need to refocus, reframe how we are doing things around the house so that we can work better as a partnership,
Well, the reason why I wanted to bring this up, and I've gotten permission from Darlie Lynn in the past to actually discuss this here, because believe me, if she had asked me not to, I wouldn't be. But the point is, and the reason why I bring this up is because...
Well, she said, Rich, I killed those kids, but I don't want you to tell anybody.
When people find this out, oh yeah, that was the whole reason, a spousal revenge. That's why Darlie, killed those boys. No, let's talk about what really happened and what the facts were. Now, if their marriage was so bad, then how come Darren didn't divorce Darlie until 2011?
Well, you're not listening. You didn't listen to the interview that I had with his mother. Darlie sent him divorce papers 3 times before he would sign them. That came straight from Darren's mother, Cyrilda. 200 and some thousand of us saw it. He stopped seeing her. He doesn't go up there. Why did he wait? He was out here carousing with other women before 2011. That came straight from Darlie Key.
So they stayed married from 1996 to 2011.
That doesn't mean that Darren was married. That means he was legally bound to someone who killed his kids that was on death row. He still did his Darren thing. He went back to the girlfriend he had before he met Darlie, and he's with her now.
They were married prior to that, but I'm saying, after the murders, they stayed married till 2011. That's not what people do that want to get divorced from one another.
Exactly.
Darlie asked for the divorce, not Darren. Darren says, my wife asked me for a marital separation. So, of course, no, Darren did not want to get a divorce. Darlie did. Because she was frustrated with Darren. 3 times she sent him papers from prison before he signed them.
Exactly.
Okay. So I want to put that out there so people get the right information.
Oh, yeah, we got the right information. People who want divorces don't wait until 2011. Yes, I agree with you. But it was Darlie that asked Darren, not Darren that asked Darlie. Use your brains.
But all in all, Darlie Lynn said she had a great marriage with Darren. She had a great marriage, and she loved her marriage with him. She did tell me that.
Yeah.
So, but it was just right at that time, sadly, right at the time that horrible catastrophe occurred, they were having some arguments. But
Well,
I mean, me and Bonnie have
baby in the
arguments.
house.
She told me during the interviews here, for everybody, she told all of us that they had been fighting like cats and dogs for a week.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, like we said, you have ups and downs in marriages, especially when you go through having kids. That's a huge change to the household.
People take it out of context, though, and
Yes.
they make it into something that it's not.
Here's us making it into something that it's not. This is us doing that.
And, that was one of the biggest things I was looking at initially in the case, because that could have a bearing on something like this. And when you just find out, a lot of things got blown out of proportion to be much worse than they really were.
They really are. They really are trying to make us believe that something we read in an official court document from the person who was there, they're actually trying to minimize that at this point.
Or much, yeah. I mean, I could go on and on and on about that, but we are on motives. But I really want somebody in the audience to come up with a question. By the way, Annie Oakley just messaged me. She got unexpected company. She said she's going to try to come back in, but she was unaware that she was going to get the company. But if she can come back in, she definitely will.
That means she had her snack and she's ready for a nap. It seems like every time she gets on panel with Rich, it sounds like somebody eating a bag of Doritos. Dogs barking and shit.
James Wood has quite a few comments. If we want to go over some of what he said, and then I saw one. iHeart 90. They had knives and did attempt to kill them. So I don't know that there was any danger to the intruder. Basically stating like, coming off of the truth question, I believe the intruders were startled by Darlie and the boy sleeping downstairs. But do we want to start going into, does anybody else have Darlie motive? Or do we want to start getting into
that has nothing to do with motive, though. I like to stick to the subject matter. And it's something we don't want to answer nobody's questions, but it's real easy to get off on a left field tangent because this case is so huge.
Yeah, that's why you just brought your wife up to talk about her personal stuff. That you had solely talking about her personal stuff with funerals. You get off on shit that don't matter about the case. Yeah, I agree with you.
I think that's a good question, though, when we start to go into what a possible intruder's motive would have been.
It could have been a lot of things. It could have been a lot of things. The problem is
there's lots of motives for an intruder, but none for Darlie.
We can all have assumptions all day long and speculation, but by looking at the evidence, you got to look at it for what it is. I mean, somebody came in that house and attacked Darlie and almost.
That's not what it is.
Killed her and killed those two little boys. That's what we know. That's what we can prove, and we can prove that. But what was the cause of it? It could be a lot of different things. It could be a lot of different things.
Keep saying it could be a lot of different things for an intruder. But for Darlie, there was absolutely no reason whatsoever. You betcha.
And we can name a lot of different things. I don't know that I want to do that at this point with everything being looked at, but there could have been a lot of different reasons for it.
Well, I will say to James Wood, he said, I really think, Rich, you should start at the moment 911 call begins and do a timeline. We have timelines. We can share those. We've all done timelines based on the 911 call, based on what the ME put how long Damon could have lived. I've done an extensive timeline myself.
But that doesn't go to motive. So if the timeline doesn't, the only thing in the 911 call, the only thing in the 911 call that could be pulled as motive is the officer says something and Darlie responds with nothing is touched. It's all here, something along those lines. So some people could pull that as motive would have been robbery or something of that nature for the intruder, but we don't have any motive in the 911 call from Darlie.
Right. Well, and
there's nothing touched. There's nothing touched. Guess what one of the questions would have been had Darlie not made the statement that nothing was touched? One of the questions that she would have been asked, do you notice anything missing? Darlie was just setting her alibi by saying there's nothing touched. She's just putting that in place because they are obviously going to know that nothing was stolen from that house. There's nothing touched. It went out the garage. Somebody came in here. I was sleeping. My husband's helping me. All these statements that she makes. There's nothing touched. Well, how would she know that nothing was touched if she had just passed out, if she had traumatic amnesia, if she was unconscious for a period of time, like the supporters say? How would she know there was nothing touched? Did she do a moral inventory and a material inventory of the house before she made that statement? I'll tell you why she said there's nothing touched. Because she didn't touch anything but her kids.
There's also
in a future episode, but he said
there's also no evidence. There's also no evidence. There's also no evidence showing that an intruder broke into that house to rob it.
There's none. No evidence. None at all.
There's no evidence of that because there was nothing taken.
Panties. Right?
Which, a lot of people have said over the years that it was a botched robbery or it was an attempted robbery that went bad. Show me the evidence of that. I know there are a couple things that can make one question that, of course, and I'm not saying that wasn't the case. What I'm saying is we don't know that. There's a lot of things we don't know. Sadly, we may never know. I'm hoping we will soon, but as of right now, we are not 100%. You can bet the farm I have an idea what happened, but I also could be wrong. So, that's the point that I wanted to make. And we could speculate on that stuff all day, but it's not really, it's irrelevant because we can't prove it. Because the initial investigation that was done, they made a mess of it. They cross-contaminated blood evidence. They just contaminated the whole crime scene. They got glass all over the place under their.
Yeah, they did it. They got glass all over the place. Even though it was Darlie that wrote, there was glass all over the floor. That's what Darlie wrote. Right? But that's not true because the first responders, they're the ones that got glass everywhere, all over the floor. Right?
Shoes, kicking it all over the place. So you don't even know. There's just a lot of stuff. And then there was a lot of blood samples they didn't test. And then there was blood found in the garage that was never tested. They just ignored it. So, I mean, you know, when that initial investigation happens, that's the most imperative part of the whole thing. Because if you F that up, the chances of you getting something good out of it after that is very low. And they messed a lot of stuff up.
Well, and
I'm still, the only other thing I'm going to say, Danone, I'm sorry, but the only other thing I'm going to say is I still find it interesting how Detective Patterson said that it had come over the radio that they were chasing somebody on foot. I'm still trying to figure out why that was said, if there was no intruder.
I don't know that they said that. If they said that they had one on the ground, they might have been talking about where Darren was outside. I don't recall them saying that they were chasing someone on foot. I'd like for Rich to show that because.
Anyway, go ahead, Danelle, please. I'm sorry.
Did you need me to add something to that, or?
Oh,
You can add anything you want.
I don't have anything in addition to.
Oh, I was going to say,
I think you covered it.
From the Facebook group, I'll just read off. I think we've.
He says, I have looked for years for a motive from Darlie, and it's just not there. This is the same supporter who put up pictures of an actress and doubled down when someone said that wasn't Darlie and said that's Darlie. The pictures of an actress with fake wounds. Just within the last 6-7 months, put that picture up on her community post. Try and pass that off as Darlie Routier. But she's looked for years for a motive of Darlie. It's just not there. Well, fuck, you don't even know what Darlie looks like.
Covered most of them, but I can read off a few. What Darlie's motive was. We already talked about spousal revenge, filicide.
Talked about it, but you didn't. You went on to say, like I said from that study, said one of the main reasons why there are filicides in the home is because of discord between some of the cohabitants. And then you went on for an hour about how she was so upset with Darren not getting things done.
Let's see. The parents were in massive debt. We just covered that. Somebody said, I wonder if there was some dark stuff such as Satanism. She also had the black cat in the cage. Was she sacrificing her children because of money issues?
Okay, that's retarded. And whoever asked her that question, come on, man, with this Satanist shit. We don't represent people that ask those types of questions like that. That's just dumb. Sorry.
Any mother to do this had to be in a very dark place in her life. Again, I feel like we've talked about that. There's no signs of Satanism connected to this case in any way. Some people look at the date, June 6th, 1996, and there happened to be a Highway 66. I think it's somewhat coincidental. There's just no evidence of satanic or any type of dark imagery.
That's right.
Another big contributor, again, said spouse revenge. I think that's kind of the top one is spouse revenge, and money. And so I feel like we've gone through those pretty well.
You went through them pretty well, all right, but you didn't say that Darlie couldn't have done it for spousal revenge. All the signs of spousal revenge are there, actually.
I know a lot of people have questions about Darren, including James. And I think James, I think in a future episode, we could definitely do a timeline for you, but we're talking about motive today.
Yeah. Yeah, I have no problem doing the timeline.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked a lot on a timeline, sticking to facts, and we could present a timeline, but not today.
All right, now
Not with the medical examiner said that he can only live a maximum of 9 minutes, because that was not said.
let's see here where we're at on time here. All right, we actually have about 3 minutes left, and Danelle actually left. I don't know if she lost signal or if she needed to go or anything, but she'll let us know.
Yeah. Why don't we get into just a few? Why don't we leave off on what do you think the motive for an intruder would be?
He already told her he didn't want
It
to
could
do
be a
that.
lot of things.
He already told her he didn't want to do that.
I have my own personal opinion after my own investigation as to what happened, but I really can't get into that at this time. And I know when I can get into it.
Rich? Can you do one video where you don't say I can't get into it at this time? I can't get into it at this time. Darlie told me this. Various different things. Opinion. Great, sir. Right there for everybody to see.
But I definitely will. I won't waste any time doing it either. But I mean, anytime when you're investigating something, anybody with any kind of intelligence will tell you to follow the money. It's a very well-known line that has been said over the years. Follow the money.
So Tommy Lynn Sells' motivation was money. It's not always about money when there's a killing.
We'll just kind of leave it with that at the moment. On in my opinion, on my behalf. Now, I mean, if
never say that again. That's the way he does.
there's something you want to add to that, Solly, knock yourself out.
I mean, I have thought about what, because Darlie was sleeping downstairs. There are some instances that the black car, was there a stalker? Was there somebody that was watching the family at that time? Because Darlie had been sleeping downstairs for several nights, and this was the first night the boys were down there. Did somebody have possibly a sexual assault motive?
Now you're looking at motives for a person you don't even know exists. Sexual assault, huh? Fuck out of here.
They could see Darlie. They could see her green hair, through
her green hair. Did you say green hair?
Because Darlie had been sleeping downstairs for several nights, and this was the first night the boys were down there. Did somebody have possibly a sexual assault motive? They could see Darlie. They could see her green hair.
Her green hair.
Through the front windows, but you wouldn't have been able to see the kids laying on the ground. It's not a robbery, obviously, because nothing's missing. So is there a sexual assault motive?
She says this shit too fast. I gotta listen first.
Through the front windows, but you wouldn't have been able to see the kids laying on the.
How could she see Darlie? How could an intruder see Darlie through the front windows of the house? This is a dining room. This is a sit-down living room right here. This is the utility room. This is the back of the house. Darlie was laying right here. That's where she was laying. There's no way possible for anyone to see Darlie by looking in the front room, front windows. This is a dining room. This is a living room. You go straight in and over to the left is the stairwell. There's no way you can see Darlie from the front windows.
Possibly a sexual assault motive. They could see Darlie, they could see her green hair, through the front windows, but you wouldn't have been able to see the kids laying on the ground. It's not a robbery, obviously because nothing's missing. So is there a sexual assault motive to this?
Yeah, I mean, Darlie was a very beautiful young lady. It's quite possible it could have been something like that. But the problem that you have is, why would they butcher and slaughter those two beautiful baby boys?
Yeah, because in law, criminal study, criminal research, when there's children involved in a sexual assault of another adult, they usually use the children as pawns. Say, if you don't submit, I will do this. And there's also voice commands. Voice commands. Shut up. Take this off. This person made no voice commands to Darlie whatsoever.
In my opinion, I'm like, if somebody came through to do a sexual assault and then they see the kids down there, they're like,
they could turn around and leave.
Huge escalation to go from wanting to rape a woman to then end up murdering two children and possibly.
How come you say this stuff on his channel, but you always use different words on yours, like schmurder or schmrape? You don't have enough respect on his channel to not say those words?
A woman, why would they have just not turned around and left if their motive was just sexual assault?
Well,
I think you have to remember mental illness plays a lot into this. Whoever did this obviously was not mentally in a good state of mind.
Clearly.
Obviously, whoever did this was not going to be predictable. This isn't a crime that you can really, you can't predict these kind of things. It's in my opinion, it was probably a random attack.
Probably a random attack.
So that makes it very difficult for anybody to make sense out of any of it.
And random,
I think that Darlie could have very easily been a sexual assault target.
Right. I was going to say stranger on stranger, which would be our case for the most part. Stranger on stranger crimes, like where the person isn't related, it's not inside the family, or a work thing. Those are the hardest crimes to solve. As we
see, now you keep saying, Rich always believed that it was random. And Danelle's saying that she thinks it's random. But you guys will go back and say, whoever did this knew the inside of that house. You guys kill your own selves.
We know through our investigations is when I just watched the Richard Ramirez and the John Wayne Gacy documentaries, and the way that they, it's really interesting to see the predictability of certain serial killers and what makes a killer. And I think you have to look at that in this case as well. Was this a straight up,
I've given it 2 hours and 15 minutes. There's only like 30 minutes left on this. I haven't done one of these for a while, so I thought I'd put one out for the people who subscribe to my channel. They like it when I do these reacting to riches. I mean, every single time I do one, I catch them contradicting themselves every single time.